What do you think forgiveness is? When you think of forgiving someone, what do you think that actually means? Today, we're going to have an in-depth discussion about forgiveness, shadow work, personal empowerment, and what true forgiveness really is. Melanie Ryan is joining us. She's the founder of the Golden Shadow Method. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Well, hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence and we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the great mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably deeper within ourselves and our soul's curriculum. And we get to find out more about ourselves and what life is really all about. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love these conversations week after week that we have as we come on the show, and we address so many topics that people reach out to me after and say, oh my gosh, I needed that. That was like my V8 for the week. Like, thank you so much for having that conversation. And I know today is going to be one of those conversations that it could provoke you. You might feel provoked. You might feel triggered by what's said here. You might feel like that's not true. You might have some own feelings of guilt, like maybe I should have done that. You could have a lot of things stirred up today. I'm just letting you know. And that's okay, actually, totally okay if that happens. And if it does, you can always reach out for some support. So what I wanted to start today's conversation about is about what is forgiveness. And so I have a wonderful quote from Martin Luther King Jr. As many of you know that follow me, MLK is like my guide. I'm always reaching out to MLK, like, what do I do about this? And I really started looking into this topic of forgiveness when it was after my divorce and the situation with the father of my children and being very, not a very pleasant experience. And I wanted to shift it. And I started looking into it when my mom and I were fighting and I didn't want to lose my mom. And so I was like, what is forgiveness actually? Because people are telling me different things about forgiveness, but in my heart, I feel like I know what it is. And so this quote really appealed to me. Forgiveness does not mean ignoring what has been done or putting a false label on an evil act. It means rather that the evil act no longer remains as a barrier to the relationship. Forgiveness is a catalyst, creating the atmosphere necessary for a fresh start and a new beginning. It is the lifting of a burden or the canceling of a debt. The words, I will forgive you, but I'll never forget what you've done, never explain the real nature of forgiveness. Certainly, one can never forget if that means erasing it totally from his mind. But when we forgive, we forget in the sense that the evil deed is no longer a mental block impeding a relationship. Likewise, we can never say, I will forgive you, but I won't have anything further to do with you. Forgiveness means reconciliation, a coming together again. Without this, no man can love his enemies. The degree to which we are able to forgive determines the degree to which we are able to love our enemies. And that quote is from Loving Our Enemies. And I certainly felt like my ex-husband was my enemy. And for a while, I definitely felt like my mom was my enemy. And so I wanted to heal that part of me, right? And I wanted to reconcile. I really desired that reconciliation. I'm like, yes, in my heart, I know reconciliation is the answer. And so with my mom, I've been able to do that. Those of you who've been following the show, I wrote the whole book, Love is Fierce, Healing the Mother Wound. And I'm back with my mom and we're better than ever. And we don't fight anymore like we used to. It's just the coolest thing because it's all cleared, all the old stuff. So I invited Melanie Ryan to come on the show, licensed clinical social worker. She's also the author and founder of the Golden Shadow Method, a path of awakening your full human potential. And she's somebody that is really immersed in this conversation of forgiveness. And she's here to share her expertise with us because for over 30 years, Melanie has studied psychology, spirituality, and holistic medicine. And she's been a depth psychotherapist, a Buddhist and shamanic teacher, And she weaves ancient wisdom and transpersonal experiences into healing salves for the mind, body, heart, and soul. She specializes in healing complex trauma, addictions, and chronic illness. And so tell us more, Melanie, about your journey. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And so much of what you just said really struck my heart and soul. And I love the name of your show, Soul Nectar.
It's all about the nectar.
It's all about the soul and the nectar for the soul. And what is the nectar? And I don't know if you realize, but the butterfly is the symbol of the soul.
Well, I love butterflies. I'm surrounded by Mariposa.
So I do study cross-cultural spirituality and many different lineages. And the one that I really have been into in the last 5 years, the newest one, has been Greek mythology. And, the Greek goddess Psyche, which means soul, is a winged goddess. She has butterfly wings.
Oh, so cool.
And so the butterfly is the symbol of the soul. And it's actually, I have a couple of tattoos, very small ones, not huge ones. But my first tattoo, when I was like 22 years old, I went to New York City. And my first tattoo was a blue monarch butterfly. And that just really struck me because when you were talking and introducing, the show, you talked about the soul curriculum. And I was like, ooh, soul curriculum. I like that. I would love to hear more about that, right? The curriculum of the soul. What are we here to learn? What is our soul trying to teach us? And the soul has its own curriculum. And, lately I've been sort of calling myself a soul doctor. And what does it mean? And what does that have to do with forgiveness and our enemies? And how can we get to a place where we don't see anyone as an enemy? Because everyone really is a reflection of what's inside of us. What's happening in our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. So if there's adversity, right, outside of us, it's happening for a reason. It's happening to wake us up to something. So I know, people like to do this trigger warning kind of thing. And as a licensed clinical social worker, I got my bachelor's in psychology, and then I went on to social work. And then I worked in a lot of different settings, hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, addiction rehabs, residential treatment places. And, we were taught not to trigger people, and I even got called in to my supervisor's office once because I triggered a client during a group therapy session. But when I started to study analytical psychology founded by the famous Carl Jung, and that's part of the Golden Shadow method, is Jungian psychology or analytical psychology. It's called Buddhism and shamanism because they're all different vehicles of going into the unconscious, into the soul, into the shadow, right? Into what's hidden. And so what I say about triggers is that they're actually treasures.
Mm-hmm.
My book, I say triggers are treasures. And that actually triggered a lot of people because it was like, what are you talking about? How is that a treasure? How can that be a positive thing? And like so many other things that we're realizing in our culture, it's the opposite of what the mainstream says, right? So the group think is that triggers are bad. So I'm saying, no, triggers are opportunities of healing, because what triggers you is an activation of something hiding inside of you, right? So in analytical psychology, Jung famously said, what annoys you about other people will teach you something about yourself.
So true.
Right? So why is that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because we own that same annoying trait. Controlling people used to annoy the crap out of me because I had control issues that I wasn't willing to look at. So when I started diving into this, and we know that on the planet, right, over the last 3 years, everything is coming out and everyone is getting triggered. So triggers are actually a sign of what I say soul loss. It's a sign of unhealed trauma. If you have healed something, then it's not going to activate you in the same way anymore. And it's also not the fault of other people that you're getting triggered, because whatever is hiding inside of you that is not healed is yours. You own that. And I give the example of like when I was a teenager, my first boyfriend who I was with for a couple of years, my first love, and he had a silver Honda. And after we broke up, I was devastated. And so for a couple of years, every time I saw a silver Honda, I would get triggered. So it's not necessarily people that trigger us. It's also places, smells, a silver Honda, And so the environment and these things happen actually not randomly. It's happening. It's called a shadow projection in analytical psychology. The shadow, the unconscious, or what's in your soul gets projected out into the universe and is reflected back to you. So we're actually manifesting opportunities to get triggered so that we become conscious. Triggers are a way of becoming conscious. There's sparks of awakening. And so it brings you back to that wounded part of you. And I call that wounded part the spirit of the wounded self, that it's actually a spirit inside of you. And you have many spirits inside of you. You have spirits that carry amazing strengths, some that you're not aware of, gifts and talents. And then there's spirits inside of you that are versions of you that, are wounded, that need your love and attention. And how else can they get your attention than through shadow projection and being triggered? And so for me, I have been doing this work on myself for over a decade. And I started to work with the spirit of the wounded self, the many versions of me that were split off as a result of trauma. Like in shamanism, right? We learn soul retrieval. We learn that trauma creates a wound and a part of us splits off, not completely because nothing is ever separate, but I say it kind of goes into another dimension. It's like frozen in time. And so until we acknowledge that, and there's a process that I teach, a protocol of going in and using active imagination, like Carl Jung taught, where we actively imagine speaking to the spirit of our wounded self. Could be your 2-year-old. It could be your 40-year-old. It's not inner child work. It could be, you were in a car accident like 2 months ago and you lost a part of yourself. Like you haven't really felt like you're back in your body completely yet. So we leave our body when we go through trauma in a way. And so it's often this other dimension. And then we go in and we talk to it. It can talk to us. We can talk to it. And the goal is to gain its trust. Because the reason why it left was because it wasn't feeling safe because of trauma. So in shamanism, we learn how the soul splits off as a result of trauma. And then soul loss creates all these symptoms. It can create mental illness. It can create physical illness. Symptoms are ways that the soul speaks to us through the body. It's communicating. And so triggers are just another symptom of soul loss. So when I teach Buddhist meditation. I'm a Buddhist teacher, authorized to teach in the lineage of Shambhala. So I am formally a Buddhist teacher, and I teach meditation, specifically meditation around a concept called Shenpa, 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 which means to get hooked. So when you get triggered, right, someone's got a hook in you. Right. And you can be obsessing about them and you obsess about the whole situation, can't seem to let it go because it has its hook into a wound that is not resolved. And it's creating an opportunity. So that's why triggers are treasures. It's because it's creating an opportunity for you to become conscious, to become more aware, to know a part of you that you have forgotten and buried. For good reason, because you don't really want to feel the pain. But we know that in order to heal, you have to feel, right? To heal it, you have to feel it. So we have to go in and do the transmutation work. We have to go and meet with these spirits. And this goes all the way back to Native American, cross cultures. And even Jung said we were possessed. Our psyche held many different spirits inside of it. And Native Americans say this too. That we have all kinds of spirits in our psyche, and those can be from the collective, and they can also be from our personal shadow, which is our own spirits. We can be possessed by our own spirits. We try and run from our pain. We try and run from these wounded versions of ourselves, but they don't disappear because we can't kill energy, right? So the emotions of the trauma are locked in space. They're sort of frozen in time, connected to that spirit of the wounded self. And it could be many versions of you. You could have like 10 of them, and some people say, am I ever going to be done? Because I just published a workbook where people can keep track of, I'm like, okay, create a page for your 7-year-old. And now create a page for your 10-year-old and your 12-year-old, because they start to come in organically through your triggers. So meditating and taking the time to work with the Shempa and sit with it, and what's coming up for me? Where do I feel it in my body? Like maybe I feel tight in my chest. Maybe I can't breathe. Maybe my jaw is clenched, or maybe I feel like I got punched in my stomach. And then where does it take you? Right? So you might be like, it's totally reminding me of when my father abused me when I was 7 years old. So boom, I say, that's it. It's your 7-year-old is here. So we become possessed by that spirit of the wounded self, or in shamanism, we would call it shape-shifting. Do you ever have an argument with someone and you're like, why do I feel like I'm talking to a child right now? And I say,
Right.
oh, because you are.
Yeah, because you're talking to their unhealed child. I mean, that's so much of what this is. And I mean, and it's even other lifetimes, but even beyond that, I've realized it's the ancestral fractal, because these ancestral patterns, they ripple down generation to generation to generation. And we're kind of all working on similar content. And the reason I can say that with some certainty now is because we have the gene keys. So we can actually print out someone's map, of their soul curriculum by putting the time and date of birth and the location, and then spit out a map. So, I mean, that's really how I started healing the relationship with my mom, because I printed out my gene keys map and I went, this is very accurate. Like, this is me. These are all the thought tunnels I judge, and then I have an opinion, and then I get disappointed, and then I have expectations. Like, this is my map. Like, when I look at my map, these are my shadows I'm always confronted with. And then I thought, I'm going to go look at my mom's map. So I went and pulled her map out, and I'm looking at this map and I'm like, my mom has reaction and provocation and struggle and conflict and all these things. And I was like, oh, she can't help it. She literally can't help it. Like, this is her map. And I started realizing, like, I signed up for that. Like, I signed up. So if I signed up for it, that means there's some benefit to me as a soul to have had a mother who provoked me, who struggle and conflict and all the things that actually is for me.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I've never done the gene key. I might have to do that now. I've used my other, I have, like I was saying, cross-cultural interests. I've studied Mayan cosmology, and I've used Mayan astrological charts to also read people. And it's a great way it's a reading of you on a soul level, and it gives positive and negative, right? So I had to learn about myself. It gives you animals and plants and, different, everything is nature. So my Mayan sign, my birthday, is actually the world tree, but it's also crocodile.
Interesting.
And so crocodile.
Yeah.
Right. So I learned the positive sides to that, and also the sides that I need to be mindful of. And when I was working with I have a mother wound too. So when I was working with people in my family, I was doing Mayan charts, and I was like, same thing. Oh, she can't really help it. This is who she is, like, constitutionally, right? We come in with these, I say, constellations, like we're these like star beings. And on a Mayan chart, you have 9 signs. And it's like, that's your constellation, even though we can embody all 20 of the Nawals. But the 9 are really prominent. And your one that you're on your birthday is very prominent. So to become aware of, everyone, and this is shadow work, everyone has a dark and a light, right? It's like yin and yang. And that's the cosmos. And then we learn how to transcend that duality, right? So becoming aware of your own yin and yang, your dark and light, and becoming aware of other people's, that perspective helps us realize, well, she is who she is. And yes, adversity serves a purpose for us, right? We need adversaries, and sometimes your mother is your adversary. It's like the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, she's very popular. She says, the most difficult people in your life are your spiritual teachers. And so we can actually go from forgiveness, which I say for me, my experience in being able to forgive came from healing those wounded parts of me, because until those wounded parts of me calmed down, because otherwise I was like hanging up the phone, cursing, yelling, because I was getting activated. Once those wounded versions of me, the spirit of the wounded self, once they got the love and attention, and I did the shadow integration, the soul retrieval, and started to integrate, then I wasn't getting activated. Then I could start to forgive. And then beyond forgiving, I could actually be grateful.
Yes, beyond forgiveness is gratitude. That's exactly where I got with my mom too, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to my mom for being who she is so that could become who I am, because all that provocation and getting me out of mediocrity, she was just trying to help me be in my style. She was helping me to be strong and be myself and not be so permissive and so submissive. And, she's like, she's trying to shake me awake. Like, come on, I didn't raise you to be this way. I want you to be yourself. And I was like refusing to go along for a while. I was like trying to keep the peace and not go through the conflict. We can actually have some gratitude. Like, you hung in there with me and you never gave up, even though I was being a dang fool for like a long time. It's like, thank you for hanging out with me when I was being a fool and loving me anyway, and getting frustrated with me, but loving me anyway through it. That's really very helpful.
Well, and we can be their biggest challenge too, right?
Yeah, my
The
son
mothers
is
can be our
definitely.
challenge, and we can be their challenge. I'm sure if my mother came on the show, she could tell you what a challenge I was to her.
Oh, no doubt.
So what the sparks that happen, right, as a result of the conflict, that we don't have to run away from the conflict. We don't have to run away because we don't agree. And there's been a lot of disagreement. There's been a lot of division. And I think that this topic is so important for people to understand that we can come to a place of forgiveness and even beyond forgiveness into gratitude if we're willing to go within. I'm working with a couple now that are having problems because, and a therapist who's actually training with me in the triggers protocol, transmuting triggers protocol, because so many couples are they're just triggering each other, right? So it's not always mother-daughter. Sometimes it's in partnerships. And so all of the unhealed wounds are getting projected. All this shadow projection is happening, and it's all creating this ugly mess. And there's blame, right? So when you blame someone else for your triggers, like, you triggered me, right?
How many times have we heard people say that? You triggered me.
And what I say is, just like you had to learn that you shouldn't say you made me feel a certain way, you should say, like, I'm angry because X, Y, and Z, right? So we have to own our feelings. Same thing with triggers. We have to own it, and we have to say to ourselves, I'm triggered right now. I'm activated right now. And what is this? What's happening inside of me? What is it reminding me of? Where is it taking me to? It usually reminds people of something, another time in their life that they didn't feel respected or didn't feel heard or didn't feel loved or felt betrayed. And so it's all this projection of the past coming into the present. And so it happens with mothers, it happens with partners, it happens all over the place. So because we're here, why are we here? Right? We're here to figure out who we are, right? And our life purpose, and to heal.
And I think if people had a little bit more information, it's kind of like, so often what we call abuse towards ourselves is actually those trigger places getting pinged. It's like, oh, we feel that wound so deeply because you did this mean thing, or you were abusive to me, or you didn't treat me with respect, and then let's take you didn't treat me with respect. Let's just take that one for a second. Even without any other model, the question is, are you treating yourself with respect? because that's a deep wound. If you're not treating yourself with respect, then that's a very deep wound. And then another level is, I'm sure in your system as well, you can find a place that points to this, but like in the gene keys, there's a line of emotional center that's respect and disrespect. There are people on the planet that are specifically working on the respect and disrespect line of their emotional center. And so, yeah, it's super provocative when that gets pinged for that person that is working on that curriculum. Is very tense inside their bodies because that is part of their design. For me, it's apathy and sympathy. So when I experience apathy, and thank goodness I see this model, it's like, oh, that's what that is, because I always suppress my feelings, and then I won't express how I feel if it's anger or something like that, up until I learned to do better than that. But I would cause myself disease, and I would suppress my anger to the point where I would flash, like it would over something stupid and react. And then I could judge myself because I reacted over something silly and stupid. And then the other person could say, you reacted, you abused me because you spoke out, or so now we're like pinging back and forth. And in the gene keys, I call that the Eden loop, where you just ping back and forth between your emotional center and your IQ defenses, your emotional defenses and your IQ defenses, your mental defenses. This is back and forth volley between you and the other person. And so many of us are in this game where, like, speaking of the triangle of disempowerment, where we each feel like the victim and the other person's the perpetrator. And the funniest thing is when you think you're the victim and the other person's your perpetrator, and then they start telling you, no, I'm the victim and you're my perpetrator. That's what happened in my first marriage. And I was like, how can we both be victims at the same time? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because you attracted each other, right? The wounded version of you picked him. The wounded version of him picked you so that this shadow effect could happen, and you could it will cause pain. And what does pain do? It makes you seek help. It makes you, go in to try and find out, why did this happen? And what part did I play? Or what part did he play? And it's all to make us look within. It's that pain and discomfort. That's why people come in for therapy. That's why people come in for healing work. That's why people come to Buddhist meditation centers, because they're in pain in some way and they're confused. And so it's natural for us to want to avoid the pain, right? I mean, that's just human nature. So I teach in the Golden Shadow Method, in the Buddha and the Shadow Pillar, which is an online immersion, actually starts tonight. We lean in to the pain. We learn how to become like the spiritual warrior, where for small periods of time, we sit on a meditation cushion and we conjure up, start small with small conflicts, right? And, what was the story? How did you feel in your body? So where do you feel anger in your body, right? And do you know your body? Do you know how your mind and body are interconnected? Can you be aware of, your feelings as they're coming up? Can you identify them? I mean, some people can't. Some people aren't at the place yet where they can really sit with their emotions and know how they feel. It sounds very basic, and it is, right? But like, what kind of sadness do you have? There's so many different kinds of sadness. There's loneliness. There's abandonment. There's feeling unloved. There's feeling unworthy, so helping us to sit with the emotions and gain that emotional IQ, that emotional intelligence, that self-awareness of what is going on inside of me. What is this person activating? And for me, it's working with that wounded spirit, that version of you that's still alive in your psyche. These versions of you remain alive until you interact with them and bring them home. And then all triggers disappear like magic.
Yeah. And, the triggers disappear. And there's also this little magical space. And this is where I was also trying to encourage people, because your perception of the other person can totally change through the process of healing the triggers, right? Mm-hmm. Your perception of what's going on can completely shift. And in some circumstances, the person can show up completely different than they ever did before. Like it's like a different person that you're dealing with now. Like they're not even the same person. They stopped doing whatever the thing was. And it's not because you went and had this conversation with them and said, hey, you need to stop doing this behavior. It's because something has shifted in the matrix and now they are no longer behaving that way and they're changed. And
Right.
it's only because you cleared everything in you that was responding or making that person respond that way, the dynamic. And if they want to keep playing that pattern out, they seek somebody else. And this is the thing I was having a hard time explaining to people is that you don't have to lovingly set a boundary with the person. I mean, you can, but that's not all the way. When you actually get to the healing part, when you've actually cleared it, one of two things will happen. They will just disappear because it's not fun anymore. They're not getting the game that they were playing. They're not getting that satisfaction of the shadow game if they want to keep doing that. And they'll go find somebody else. Or the second thing is they'll completely change. You'll just be like, who is this person? Because they won't even do the thing anymore.
Well, because when you do shadow integration is what it's called in analytical psychology. When you integrate the wounded version of you, that's in shamanism called soul retrieval, right? So you filled that hole, you filled that space, which was where the patterns were and the triggers were coming from. So now that space is filled and you're no longer seeing them through the eyes of your 5-year-old, say. So it's not that they've changed. It's that your perspective has changed because you're no longer looking through the lens of the wounded version of you anymore.
Yeah. And that's the smoky mirror. This is really trippy, you guys. Like just take a moment and just think about this for a second. Just let it sink in.
Well,
that smoky mirror is real. It's real, Melanie.
People know, we know when we get activated, right? And we're like, and we say things and we do things and we friggin' lose it. We lose it, right? Everyone knows what it's like to have lost it and go on full on temper tantrum like a little kid. And we've seen it, we've done it, we've seen it in other people, right? So now here comes the compassion. When you start to do this work and you go in and you meet with the wounded versions of you and you see how hard some of these versions of you are so traumatized and so scared, they're so hard to bring home, some of them. Some of them come running and hug you and, you know, they're ready to integrate into your heart, right? And some of them are like off in the corner crying. Like you know, sometimes I had to call in shamanic guides or grandmothers to help people retrieve wounded versions of them. So it's not easy work, but once we do it and they come home, then everything changes and you realize that, oh my gosh, like that person who's triggered right now, it's not really them. It's a wounded version of them. They're speaking through them. They're possessed. We get temporarily possessed. And some people say things like, I'm so sorry, I don't know what came over me.
That has happened to me before. I had a phase in my life, like near the end of my marriage, my first marriage, where that happened. And I was doing things I never thought I would do. And I was stunned at myself. And I was like, I can't keep this up. And that's really primarily why I ended the marriage, because I was like, this is not good. Like, I'm not getting the help I need to stop this. And I don't know what to do. So I need to just get out of the situation and just go somewhere else. Like, that's basically what I did. But it's like a whole different, it is like being possessed. And in the shamanic terms, like we might personify it and say it's entities or, you know, something like that. We might personify and say, okay, that's an entity and we're just going to clear the entity. But the other thing is like, it's really just restoring shadow to light. I mean, it's just kind of bringing everything home, like you said. If we could keep the cleanest perspective on it, the highest view possible, it's just pieces of us that forgot themselves. They just forgot that they were love. And we're bringing them back home to love. And we're bringing all the pieces of ours back home to love, right? And however we do that.
Well, we do need to gain their trust. Because when trauma happens, the reason why that version of you split off and went into whatever dimension it went into is because they didn't feel safe anymore. And that can be because of, you know, all different kinds of abuse. And the way we experience trauma is different. What might traumatize one person might be the slamming of a door Or, sometimes I've done this work with some people and it was like they were 4 years old and it was the first time they ever got yelled at because they spilled the milk, and they experienced a soul loss because they got yelled at, and they all of a sudden realized being here on earth doesn't feel so safe. So we do leave the body. And I've worked with a very prominent psychotherapist who helps heal PTSD among combat war veterans. And people who experience really severe trauma report leaving their body. And so combat war veterans even talk about they have to kill people, right? They have a job. They're sent off to war, and there's stories of soldiers, who they go into moral conflict, this like moral injury within themselves of, oh my God, I have to kill people right now. But I always, was taught not to kill people. That's bad. So they go into such a psychic conflict that they leave their body and they report watching themselves from above, looking down, killing people. And so on the battlefield, they lost their soul. Their soul separated. It never really came back. And so my mentor actually takes people to Vietnam and to Greece. I study with him, and they go to these battlefields and actually do soul retrieval work. And I've learned a tremendous amount from him about how to integrate all of it into, as a psychotherapist, not necessarily having to be a shamanic teacher, but to help psychotherapists become doctors of the soul. Because that's what Jung was doing. Carl Jung was doing shadow integration. It was soul retrieval. It was bring home these parts that are out there still suffering in the field, in our psychic field. And we get possessed by them. We can get possessed by entities of the collective shadow. Our personal shadow is our, this lifetime. But then we do have, because we are soul traveling through time and space, we do have, I've been doing work around soul retrieval with past lives and ancestral stuff too. So it goes deeper and deeper. And the Golden Shadow Method actually is a 2-year program, can even be a 3-year program because I have some students now who are repeating the 2-year. So it's a really deep purification process of the mind, body, heart, and soul. My work gets into naturopathy and cleaning out the mind and the body and, the foods and the chemicals and all of that, because that also affects behavior. Sugar and alcohol and drugs can make us very aggressive. And that's all to heal, to try and not heal, but numb the pain. We just have a tremendous amount of pain that we've been burying for many, many lifetimes. And it's all coming out now, right? We're going through this wave, right?
Yeah. And when we feel all that pain, it is, when somebody's in pain, it's really hard for them to be understanding and compassionate because pain is painful. And so, yeah, but we have to lean into it. This kind of emotional pain, mental and emotional pain, we've got to lean into that pain and do our shadow work to clear that pain, to reclaim ourselves. And then we won't be in so much emotional, mental pain. And some of that physical pain also has to do with the emotional, mental pain that hasn't been processed. I mean, some of those things have to do with that, especially the unexplained things that they say, we have no idea why you're experiencing this, those things. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the sort of experience that I've had with my mom of like the blank slate that Martin Luther King talked about is such a relief. Like it actually is such a relief. I can be around my mom and be carefree, like just pure hearted, just, hey mom, so good to see you. I don't have any of those defenses up. I'm not like, I used to have to breathe and count to like 100 in my head. Like anytime she said something really triggering, I'd be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, I'd be like, and then she would say these horrible things. And I look at my dad and my dad's looking at me and I'm just like, I'm like, namaste, 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 like, and just chanting in my brain, just to deal with what I was experiencing from her. But that was just all my inner reality, because my dad's just looking at me like, she's just saying the truth to you right now and you don't like it. But I couldn't see that at the time because I was so immersed in my shadow, my smoky mirror, that I couldn't own it. So when we clear the mirror, my gosh, it's so much easier to live like with a clear mirror with somebody, right? Like it's just, there's no more of that weird defensive stuff.
Yeah, you're more clear because you're not seeing through the wounded version of you anymore. So now you're seeing your mother through who you are now, currently, instead of wounded parts. And there, a lot can get activated at one time. When we get triggered, there's more than one version of you that can jump in you and possess you and make you start saying things and thinking things and, just knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Right?
That's because there's a lot of us that grew up with our moms, right? I mean, moms and dads, like there's many versions of us, right? Through the years. So that could be offended at something.
So when
tone of voice and everything.
Yeah. So when you heal and become whole, which is what healing means, healing, the root word of healing is actually German. It means to return to wholeness. So we've been hurt, we've been wounded, we've been traumatized, our soul, our heart and soul, right? We say things like, oh, I feel like, she stabbed me in the back, right? Like that's a puncture wound. That's what trauma is. It's a wound to our heart and soul. When we imagine like being stabbed in the back, where is it? It's right in the heart, right?
Yeah, it's in the back of the heart. And sure, it does hurt when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to heal the soul. And there's not a whole lot of talk about that, right? So, I mean, you do, I do, right? But like, we haven't gotten there in our mainstream. Like, medicine is not incorporating trauma, what trauma does to us.
Yeah. And I mean, the journey of forgiveness in this context that we're talking about is really like claiming that full journey to wholeness. It's like you're taking this painful relationship that is your impetus to make yourself whole, to reclaim all the parts of you that get triggered by this person and to be in that process. And yeah, it's not easy. It's messy, right? I mean, I've done many ceremonies with plant medicine, yuking into a bucket, because I was in the ceremony and I had to release a bunch of toxic energy I stored in my body about my mom that whole 3-year period. I cried, I was angry, I fumed. I mean, there were parts of me that I had to hold that I was just like literally fuming anger inside every single pore of my body, breathing through it, being held by my mentor, like, it's okay, take a breath, take a breath, take a breath, and really hold that one. And then it would just melt at some point and disappear. It was like, it's gone. So when we go through those difficult moments, right, it goes away, it dissolves, it integrates back. It's gone, that part. I don't feel that anymore.
Integration is the key. We have to integrate, we have to transmute the wounds into wisdom. Sometimes we're not totally conscious of, all the different versions of ourselves that are getting healed. Like if you do a plant medicine experience, you're not necessarily all the time, you're not always conscious of what just happened. Some parts you are, some parts you aren't. And Jung said that we're 95% unconscious.
Yeah, that's true. So it's a lot of stuff in the soup, isn't it?
There is. And from this lifetime and
other lifetimes.
And, so forgiveness is totally possible and not being triggered is totally possible. And people can check out my website and see all the testimonials of complex PTSD. I mean, it's blowing me away, actually, how I just decided to release this protocol publicly. I didn't know that I was ever going to. It's a combination of a lot of ancient wisdom that I've gathered over the last 15, 20 years. And I never thought I was going to release it, but the universe had another plan. And, it's our job to surrender to that. So it is coming. There's going to be a lot about it in my next book, which is called Secrets of the Golden Shadow. And it's about healing and transcending trauma. Like we need to transcend. We need to start to really see things from a really big perspective. Like you were talking about, I chose my mother, she chose me, this is karma playing out, this is all happening with meaning and purpose to it. We have to find the meaning and the purpose of the relationships and our trauma and everything that we've been through to be able to find the wisdom and the compassion and the forgiveness and the gratitude. And it's there for us. We have to choose to go in and lean in. Stop blaming others for your triggers and own them. Own that you've been traumatized. Trauma is universal. If you're here on earth, you're going to go through some shit, right? Can I
Totally.
say that?
Yeah. Yeah. And guys, this isn't a mental process. There's a mind involved, but it is emotional, it's physical, it's spiritual. And the mind knows probably about 10% about what's going on. And the rest of it is like the other aspects of you. And that's why just sitting and talking about forgiveness is at a really shallow level that doesn't actually move yourself into the energy of forgiveness. So you've got to actually go to depth. You can't just use the brain and words. It's not getting at it.
Yeah. And when people come to see me, it's basically like, what triggered you in the last week or two, and that's where we go. Like, it's an organic process, because sometimes people are like, I feel lost. I don't know what to work on. I'm like, well, your triggers are going to tell you.
Yeah. They're a very good map.
Exactly.
Guideposts.
Exactly.
What you need to work on.
Exactly. So we don't have to think so hard about, where are the wounded parts, but sometimes it's a little tricky to figure out identifying the shadow projection, basically. What wounded part is this? And that's where I help people. And once they can work on it on themselves too. So soul retrieval has never been something that you could usually do on your own, but I'm helping them, they touch in with me, and then they're off continuing to go in this transpersonal state, connect with the spirit of their wounded self. And forgiveness just comes. It's not even something that you have to work hard with, because once you go in and you're like, wow, like if I have all these wounded versions within my psyche, well, then everyone else does too.
Everybody else does too. Welcome to the Earth Club. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful share today, Melanie. Everybody listening, I hope that you got some gems from this and got some insights and for your own journey. You said that everything's at your website. Can you tell us what your website is?
So yeah, my website is Melanie Ryan, LCSW.com. And I'm also on Instagram, which is golden.shadow.method. And I talk about the golden shadow because there is a tremendous amount of gold that can be found. And when we do this work, we also reclaim all of the amazing parts of ourselves that also split off: the playful side, the creative side, the side that likes to dance, the side that likes to sing. And, there's so much creativity and playfulness, that gets reclaimed when we bring back all of these parts of ourselves. So the golden shadow means that there's a tremendous amount of positivity that's hidden and buried and lost and forgotten as well. So I like to make sure that we keep that in mind when we talk about the shadow. There's a tremendous amount that's positive, that's hidden.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, that was a really good point to make. Thanks for making that one. Gorgeous. Okay, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed this broadcast and this conversation. Please give us a like, a share, a comment. Share it with a friend who you think might be interested in the work. And give us a review on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you found us. And we're going to give kisses now, Melanie. You want to give kisses with me? I always give them at the end. Here they come, everybody.
Thank you.
Love you guys and have a great week. And I'll see you next week on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, Nectar Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.